What's up, y'all? Welcome to the Dope Life Podcast, the dopest podcast ever. And I'm, of course, your host, Coach AJ. And if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you can never miss another episode. And that dope people just like yourself can get all the self-care, self-compassion tips that we give week in and week out. And if you could be oh so kind, leave us a review and a rating. It would be greatly appreciated. And as always, we usually start with a little deep breath. And I think the person who I have on today's episode. It's such an honor to have her on it. I met her literally this year in a classroom that's been virtual, and we finished. Yay to us! But right, yay to us. So today we're going to be talking about ADHD, coaching, and so much more. And I have the great pleasure to have Sandra on here. Hi, Sandra. How are you doing?
Hey, Jay, so nice to see you again. I've missed you. I've missed you.
I right. We were meeting. We were just saying kind of before this. We used to meet up every Tuesday at
Yeah.
6:30. I think it was. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
6:30. And now it's kind of like knocked down to nothing because we're all done. We're
Oh,
back in our little world. So we definitely got to meet outside of our little virtual screens and do a little bit better with
definitely,
that. So welcome to
definitely.
the podcast. How are you
Thank you.
feeling today?
I'm good. This is such a pleasure. I'm a bit nervous, but you'll
Nah.
you'll hear more about me that I've learned to manage that really well.
Yeah, so why don't you tell the people a little
Yeah,
bit about yourself, where they can find you, all those. I'll be putting in a description, but yeah, you can,
yeah,
introduce yourself.
sure. So my name is I go by my stage name of Sandy B when I do these types of things. And my website is www.sandeeb.com, and that's double E, so Sandy B.
Okay.
And I sort of do a little bit of everything. So, like you said, I did do the life and wellness coaching course with you. So, we're rounding that up and finishing official certification. Not that I
Hmm.
haven't been doing that for a long time. And that's really near and dear to my heart. Like you said, I do have ADHD myself. I'm a late diagnosed woman, unfortunately. Unfortunately, I guess. And that's really what helped me to turn my life around in the last few years. It's really been sort of a reckoning, and it's helped me to push through some really difficult things and issues and symptoms that I was having that came with my own ADHD. So now that I'm finally treated and better, I'm able to do the things that I've always wanted to do since I was a kid. So I'm doing a lot of advocating, motivational speaking, yeah, coaching, ADHD coaching, all sorts of things. You don't even know this yet, AJ, but I started doing stand-up comedy. Yeah,
Finally,
I
no,
know.
y'all don't understand. Like the entire class was trying to tell her you should just do stand up comedy. Like the entire class. So
Yeah,
that's
r-
amazing. Congrats to that.
thank
Like that's
you. That's
awesome.
that's probably my biggest accomplishment to date for sure. I'm actually doing a gig tonight, so that's going to be
Oh,
pretty cool.
oh,
Yeah,
damn. Okay,
yeah, I'm doing
we'll
an
make
open
this
mic,
concise.
open mic tonight.
That's
No,
awesome. Well,
no, I
congrats.
schedule everything. Schedule everything.
We definitely learned
So
that, right? That's
I know,
awesome.
I know. So yeah, that's a bit about me in a nutshell, I guess. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Like you did mention a lot of hats. You said you wear many hats. What do you find like the most difficult and like how do you overcome that?
With all the hats that I wear,
All the hats, all of them.
you know what? I have actually learned to embrace it because as someone with ADHD, there's a lot of societal expectations that are put on us. Like we have to do regular jobs, we have to be in regular 9 to 5 jobs. We should only have a few goals. We shouldn't have too many things on the go at once. But that's not really the case for people like me. I actually thrive in chaos, sort of. So long as it's
Mm,
things that I love. And that's always my message. If you can find your passion and your why and then stick to those things and do a lot, we're really capable of taking on and doing and managing more than the average person because our brain is not average.
right.
And once you find your sweet spot, it's pretty cool. I'm still figuring out where exactly my niche is. I know I'm going to be a
Hmm.
little bit of everywhere for sure, but I'm actually really comfortable right now in a place of unknowing, which is very weird to say because that used to cause me a lot of anxiety, is not knowing and not planning and not being organized. Not to say that it still doesn't. I'm definitely still working on those
Right.
things in therapy. But it's pretty cool when you finally learn to just accept yourself as you are and roll with it and celebrate it.
So, being that like you wear many hats, your mom,
Yeah.
how do you? I guess my question is, what can you say to like the moms out there that are newly, adult figuring out that they're ADHD? What message would you share with them?
That it gets better, that you're not alone. And it is one of the most treatable disorders on the planet. So it is going to get better. And I can guarantee that for people for sure. I've worked with so many women just like me. I find that a
Hmm.
lot of us mask and hide how chronically overwhelmed we are. And that's a term that's used a lot to describe a woman with ADHD, because on the outside, it looks like we've got it all together. And we tend to be perfectionists with OCD tendencies just to keep organized. But we do feel chronically overwhelmed and overstimulated. But there is hope. There's a way to do it. And again, our superpower is balancing lots of things at once. So it's not that as moms, we can't do all these things. It's
Right.
just that we have to find out how to cope and our strategies to work with our symptoms to be the best person and the mom that we can be.
Okay, that was very well put. I mean,
No.
shout out to all the moms out there, because I mean, being a mother alone is a very heavy hat.
Oh
You know,
God, is it ever?
and it's a hat you don't really get to put down. I'm
No,
35, and to be very honest, I don't think my mother has never put her hat down of being a mother
no.
of three. I don't
Yeah,
think so.
yeah,
It just, you kind of just take it along the way with you.
yeah.
And someone asked me this question yesterday. I said, like, yeah, I have this interview with a great friend of mine, great colleague, and they were wondering how could one get tested for
Oh,
as an adult.
yeah. There's so many different ways. Luckily, it's pretty well researched and well known now, ADHD. With women, it's a bit tougher. So I do always put in the caveat that sometimes as women and even with girls, you really have to advocate for yourself in order to get
Mm,
a diagnosis. But in terms of getting a diagnosis, there's so many different ways. I
right.
went the typical route of getting a psychoeducational test done for me and my daughters by a psychologist. That costs more. I have the benefits, so I was lucky and I went that route. So it depends on what you're looking for. If you need a diagnosis to get accommodations at work or to get an IEP, so that's an individual education plan at school, then, or if you want to uncover learning disabilities that you're going to need help with, then it's
Right.
worth doing that. But if you're already an adult and you're
Hmm.
finding that you have these symptoms, you can really just kind of, a lot of people, and it depends on the doctor. So it could be that your doctor's supportive or not, and that could be an issue. But it could be as easy as doing the online screeners, and I can link it somewhere here if you have somewhere, AJ, that I can link stuff after.
Yeah, yeah.
You
Just you
can
can
do
send
an
it to me. Yeah.
online screener, which is essentially a questionnaire of symptoms, and then it'll give you the results. And oftentimes, people will go into their doctor with that and say, "Here, this is how I've been feeling." I know, and a lot of these people would have typically been on antidepressants before, and it really hasn't been working. They're still chronically overwhelmed. They have problems, managing their time and keeping organized. And so you can just walk into your doctor and say, I think that this might be it. And I did this screener and I need to try medication or I need therapy or I need to be referred to this and that. So it could be as easy as that, but there's so many different ways. A psychologist can diagnose it with a big report. A nurse practitioner can diagnose it, and that's a cheaper
Okay.
option. Yeah, so a lot of people are even self-diagnosing, and that's honestly valid. There's the TikTok
Yeah.
trend, and social media trend of people seeing the symptoms and seeing it in themselves, and they just kind of self-diagnose. And what's wrong with that? You know? So there's
Yeah,
lots of different ways.
I think there's nothing wrong with that, because then you can kind of take the next steps after and see if you want to go the route, like you're saying, a nurse practitioner or a psychologist, go
Yeah,
that look at that route. I think there's nothing, because also it's kind of like weeding out if you think maybe you're overthinking or maybe it's something else. So it's a good way to kind of get through
yeah, definitely.
to
It
like get
could
the
be.
thin lines.
It could be. But the great thing about people with ADHD is that we're highly intuitive and in tune with our
Mm,
own brains and bodies. So typically, if you have a feeling that you've got it, you're likely right. And so I always tell people, especially women, to trust your gut, advocate for yourself. Yes, it can be similar to symptoms of things like anxiety, depression, PTSD. And I always talk about us just coming out of the pandemic and so many of us now having PTSD symptoms, and
yeah.
PTSD changes the chemistry in the brain to make it look like ADHD. So it's always that chicken or egg debate of, was it the ADHD that came first or was it my trauma that came first? And I always say, well, who cares? It's there. It's causing problems
Mm-hmm.
in your life. So get at it and fix it, right?
Well said.
Yeah.
Well said. Well said. Let's
Yeah.
pivot into your comedy. What kind of got you into that? That's kind of cool. Like life coach and comedy. Like I think hand in hand. I would love to have a session with you, which I've had. But
Right?
let's have
I
a
know.
which I've had, and I usually we end up laughing towards the end of it. To be
Yep.
very honest, we
I
always do.
know. I know.
But like, what got you more into comedy recently, or from the start?
Honestly, like I was always such a performer as a kid, and I was always really funny and charismatic. And I was the youngest of five kids. And I was always that bubbly, funny, energetic, hyper kid. I played like Jesus in the school play. I was always that
I'm sorry.
character. Yeah,
I'm
as a
sorry. You
woman
played.
in the 90s.
That's not even it. I just want to see pictures of you playing Jesus, please
It
and
looked
thank
it
you.
looked incredible. I looked amazing. And so yeah, I've always, and whenever I go to parties, I'm always like the life of the party. And my jokes are, honestly, my jokes are always funny. I'm very crass. I have very intrusive thoughts that I turn into jokes. So I have a very kind of sick sense of humor, but I mean, I've always sort of had that in me.
Hmm.
But we didn't talk about yet my ADHD, and often which happens with women is that it comes with severe social anxiety or performance anxiety. And
Mm.
so that started happening to me after puberty and then into my early adulthood. And I couldn't shake it because I was undiagnosed and I didn't know what it was. And it was very unconscious in me because I've always been a very confident kid and I've
Hmm.
always been confident in general. So when that was happening to me and it was so debilitating when I would stand up in front of a room or even when I would talk at a meeting, go to interviews, I didn't understand what was going on and I couldn't push through it. And for so long, I was just like, that, who cares? I just give up on my dreams. I can't do this. It's too hard. Until I got diagnosed and medicated and treated and therapy. And then I finally pushed through that. So it's always sort of been a dream of mine. But anyone who knows me and my family is not surprised that it's something I'm pursuing. And I've got like tons of material that I'm working through now. And it's been pretty cool. So I feel like I've been kind of working up to this moment my whole life. I wish it was sooner. But yeah, this is going to be my, I guess, third time performing jokes. Like second time on a stage doing it. But the first time I did
Hmm.
it was a couple of weeks ago, and it was like incredible. Like I thought, they say your first time doing stand up, like the most professional comedians will say that it takes like a year before they start getting laughs. Like it was crazy. They let me go like 2 minutes overtime. People were laughing like crazy. And afterwards, I was swarmed and they were like, let me get your name and your TikTok. I'm like, I don't have a TikTok. I don't know what's going on here.
Well, that means
I
that
know,
you need to start,
right?
getting someone to record. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. And
Yeah.
please let me know when your next show is. If I knew it was tonight, I would have showed. But yeah, let me know when your next one is. I'm
Yeah.
definitely
It'll be
coming
fun.
out. That'd be
Hmm.
totally cool. With all of the experience you've had, like you talked about, um, when you were a kid, you had a little, felt a little bit self conscious with stuff like that, and now as an adult, you're like, okay, I know ways to pursue it. What pivotal moment or experience that is so significant, impactful on your life that you look back on now, and you're doing all these amazing things that stands out the most?
Hmm. My pivotal moment. I guess it would be my aha moment when I realized I likely had ADHD and that I could treat what was going on with me too.
Hmm.
And that was when, and I was running out of hope, to be honest, because like I said, women go so under the radar because we learn to mask and cope so well that even I didn't realize that, for example, my time blindness, I overcompensated by being so obsessed with time and so organized and planned so well. I was never late. I was always early. And so I didn't know that I actually had a problem with that. So I went to, I don't know, I think 4 or 5 therapists by the time I found my therapy
Wow.
center for my daughters. And I wasn't even planning to go there myself. And 5 minutes into the conversation, because this woman was an expert in ADHD, she said, "May I make a suggestion for you? Is it possible?" And she asked me a bit about my family history and stuff. And then I was like, "Oh my God!" And I always call it like the sixth sense moment, where you're like, reeling back to all the times in your head that you're like, oh my God, how did I not know? And
Yeah.
uh, and so I think that's probably my most pivotal moment. And from then on, I just plowed forward with my treatment. And yeah, they call it like a 3-year reckoning after you get that aha moment diagnosis, start medication, of like things finally starting to happen in your life, be it with relationships, your love life, your career, whatever it is. And
Hmm.
I'm going into year 2 now, and I can't believe how far I've come. I would have never thought in a million years that I would have come this far. Yeah.
And those like pivotal moments, how do you celebrate it?
Oh, I use it for my advocacy, and
Mm.
I talk about it, and I talk about it to my kids. And I celebrate it also by finally being able to forgive myself and give myself grace and understanding who I am in my brain. And there's a couple of catchphrases that I always use when I talk about ADHD, and one of them is, these are my symptoms, not my personality. So when I lose my shit because I have a bad temper and I was not regulated, and I would go from 0 to 100, I was not mean, I was not a bad person.
Yeah.
Those were my symptoms that I couldn't control. And the other thing I always say, that it's an explanation, it's not an excuse. And
Ooh.
that's a really important one too, especially for adults. For kids, they get a little bit more leeway, but yeah,
Right,
when
because they're
when it comes to
kids.
adults, that's a really important thing to remember.
I think you kind of hit a nail there a little bit. It's It always made me. I always kind of thought. I wondered, like, I wonder if I have it, like, if I have ADHD, just the way I function. And the more I saw those videos and like the symptoms, I was sitting
Yeah.
on my couch, like, oh
Yeah.
God, like, is
Yep.
this the answer? And I'm not gonna lie, I'm considering doing the test for sure, because just to kind of have
Yeah.
more of a, what's the word? Of ease on my
Yeah.
mind. Yeah, just to get
It's
that ease off of my
yeah.
mind. And you're right, in terms of advocating for women, even like a woman of color myself, we have to advocate for ourselves. And I think
Yes.
it's downright insane that we have to, but
Yep. We do.
um we have to, because they'll be like, you're okay. Yeah, you're over exaggerating, or
Yeah.
no, you're always fine.
Hmm.
No, we could be very functional, as you said. Like anyone could be very functional in the
Over functional.
world.
So we tend to hyper function. That's the word hyper.
Ooh,
ADHD,
okay.
the H is, right, for anyone who doesn't know, ADHD
Hyper
is attention deficit hyperactivity
hyper
disorder.
disorder.
So we hyper
Okay,
focus. We
y'all
can
got that.
hyper over function, hyper function. Yeah, so it's really difficult. Like once you start learning and reading and knowing all the research, and because
Mm-hmm.
as ADHDers, we tend to hyper focus on things. So I've been obsessed with ADHD for a long time, and it annoys people around me, but whatever. Then they talk about having like the ADHD third eye. So it's like when I meet
Okay.
people, I can usually tell very quickly if they might either have ADHD or autism. So we call that neurodiversity,
Right.
right? So having a neurodiverse brain is anything like ADHD, autism,
Mm-hmm.
dyslexia, anything that's different in a brain. Yeah, because there's very telltale signs. And so, yeah, it's hard because I'm so impulsive and such a, yeah, I can be very impulsive and overstep. And I've learned to step back, but yeah, I can usually tell. And some fun facts about ADHD, like it is pervasive, AJ. And when you talk about racialized communities and the Black community, it is definitely pervasive in racialized communities.
Yeah.
And often it's because of that trauma and intergenerational trauma. So you'll see that it's pervasive also in Indigenous communities. And it very often comes with things like substance use disorder and schizophrenia, bipolar, anxiety, depression, eating disorders in women, especially. And so often, if those things are present, and no matter what people have done, it's not able to be fixed. And then they have all these extra symptoms of being forgetful, feeling chronically overwhelmed, sleep issues, also stimming, picking nails and that sort of stuff. Then it could be that that's also an issue, right? And so that's where you really have to look within and advocate. And especially in these communities, I feel like it's super, super important to advocate there. So I'm very excited. I've
Yeah.
actually just like started working with a young black fellow. I'm so excited, and he's like a light in this world. And it's like, yeah, if I can help the marginalized communities figure out what's going on with them, and let them learn what their why is and soar to the stars. That's my purpose for sure.
You seem very and thank you for sharing that. You seem like you have a drive. Like, what's your
Oh,
drive for all of this?
oh, I've always had a drive, and now I realize why. I never
Okay.
really realized before. I always talk about me being very lucky as someone growing up neurodiverse because um, I was I was really cool and popular and cute and skinny, and so I wasn't really bullied. Honestly, I was more so the bully. I have lots of regrets because I'm so impulsive and I could be mean when I tease people. I did bully, and that wasn't good. And that is a symptom of ADHD as well. It's called conflict seeking behavior. So it's like often, poking fun at people or making fun to get a rise, but it's really because we're always dopamine seeking, and that gives us dopamine. It's whatever gives us a high is what we want. So, and then when I was in school, even when I was a kid, I was always, bullying the bullies. I was always standing up for kids who were different. I've always been like, we always talk about ADHDers being bleeding hearts and justice seekers. And it's because we've been different our whole lives. For me, I never realized why I was different, but I do know now that I was different my whole life and treated as such in many ways, in the workplace especially. And I don't stand for that bullshit. I never have. I've always advocated for diversity in any given way. And I think you and I have talked about, how much diversity has come a long way, which is great. But I also
Yeah.
feel like the intersectionality of diversity is being forgotten.
What's up, y'all? It's Coach AJ here, Dope Life Coach. And if you're looking for clarity, direction, improved self-confidence, and an overall well-balanced life, let's work together. My services are available on video calling, phone, and texting. Never too late to live the life that you want. Let's work together to overcome the obstacles and achieve the goals that you want in your life. So go ahead and click the link in my bio to set up your free discovery call today.
I ask everyone this question. We're near to the end. I always
Yeah.
ask this question. What makes you feel the most dope?
What makes me feel the most dope?
Yeah, think
Honestly,
about
I
it.
would say probably making people laugh and really being able to get to somebody's heart and change their mind and heart about something. Like when I can really
Mm-hmm.
help somebody get to their aha moment and figure out their why and get the best out of them,
Right.
especially with people, for me, people who are neurodiverse with ADHD or autism who have
Mm-hmm.
felt so alone in this world that wasn't built for them.
Right.
But they are usually the most gifted and creative people because every single person I've met with ADHD or autism is gifted in something, be it art, writing, music, whatever it is. And it sucks that we're missing out on them and losing out on them because they're untreated and unsupported.
Right.
And when I can help someone discover that about themselves, find their
Mm-hmm.
why, and then finally start living it, and then the world and society gets to benefit from it,
Mm-hmm.
I know that I'm contributing to a bigger picture. And that's dope.
That is dope. That is pretty dope. That is very dope. Well, thank you so much
Yeah.
for stopping by, and I hope I can have you again
I would
on the
love that.
podcast if you're
I think
awesome.
you and I, because we can go on so many different tangents and topics. We can talk about anything. Throw it at me.
I mean, shoot, hell yeah, and we do that even like off when we're not on the podcast. So of
For
course,
sure.
absolutely. All right, y'all.
Always
Thank
a
you so
pleasure.
much for tuning in to another Dope Life podcast episode. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And I am again Coach AJ. Walk with peace and love.